now we're going to go to Zach Berman, who's wearing the same thing. Too bad.
What's up, Zach?
How we doing, ZB?
What's going on, Vinny? I'm doing great. I was enjoying that conversation for the past few minutes. But thrilled to be on right now.
We thought you was going to get on here with some jewelry on, looking like Conor McGregor.
Zach from the top row.
Listen, we spared you an ad read this time.
That's true. That's true. But you know what? The post-game locker room was probably similar to the sentiment on the show. And then Nick Sirianni's press conference was probably a little different sentiment than the sentiment on the show. Yeah, in the post-game locker room, like it wasn't a team overwhelmed by how they played, right? You know, Lane Johnson, who's been around for a while, as we all know, he was pretty honest about, like, it was sloppy. A win's a win, but you know there are things they need to clean up. The slow starts were something that he said is a problem right now that they need to fix. But you know, overall, the big picture sentiment was that they came away with a win. It's hard to win in this league, as you always hear. The defense played really well, kept they kept them out of the end zone. As far as the defense, obviously the Browns scored on special teams, but it was not like a big locker room party. It was not like New Orleans game. It was not like the Green Bay game. It was much more business as usual. You held serve, so to speak. You won the game, but you didn't come away thinking that everything's solved. And then Nick was trying to kind of say everything's great, right? And they'll figure it all out, even though they had the past 2 weeks to do it. But they'll figure it all out now, and there's nothing to worry about. It's hard to win in the league, but it was an interesting comparison between the locker room and the press conference room.
So, Zach, we were talking here. Do you have any idea? Was there any discussion amongst the media of what call Nick Sirianni superseded Vic Fangio, or possibly called a defensive call with?
So here's the thing. I don't think Nick's completely telling the truth with that stuff. I think what Nick is going to be doing this season is he'll be saying every bad call's on him, right? So if there's like when he referenced the play before halftime, the sack on third down, it would really surprise me if like Nick's only calling the bad plays. And it would be kind of like Jeffrey Lurie piggybacking all the good picks that were made. So I think that's something Nick's doing to try to like be accountable, that he'll just say whenever there's a controversial play in the game or a play that has a really negative result, he'll come forward and say that one was on me.
That's fine.
I don't know which.
It's not the same on defense, Zach. It's not the same.
Yeah. So
first of all, on offense, we understand that he's trying to like step on the grenade, if you will. But It's not great that means that there are lots of plays, presumably during the game, where Nick is involved in the play calling process. That strikes me as an issue. But then to open it up that he's also doing stuff on defense, volunteer that, to me goes beyond just covering for his guys, because he knows he's not creating a maelstrom around like questions to Vic Fangio about how involved is Nick.
Yeah, I think he's trying to present it. Like, I think the way he thinks it comes off is like blame me for all the bad stuff, credit them for all the good stuff. I don't know if the intention is received that way, but I think that's what he's trying to do. But if that is in fact true, the two plays that come to mind would be the 3rd and 10 conversion to Amari Cooper in the fourth quarter to get them near the goal line, or the big play to Jerry Jeudy. I mean, those would be the only two that would really come to mind that could qualify. That the only time the Browns went into the red zone was at that point in the game. So they barely threatened them. I actually thought the Eagles defense played well today. Now, Deshaun Watson doesn't, he certainly helps the Eagles with that, but I thought the Eagles defense played well today. So yeah, that surprised me that Nick said that about the defense, but I think this is going to be his MO. Maybe there's veracity to it, but I'm not making these a big deal, because I think what he's trying to do is like really promote the accountability for when things go bad. It's on him.
I mean, it was also the second best of 6 games on offense for the Browns this season, so it's not like the defense shut them down.
No, they didn't shut, but they didn't allow them to score a touchdown. I mean, typically, if your defense holds the other team to 9 points, you're going to win the game. Like, we can go through what I haven't looked at the advanced data on it, but from a simple version, you hold the team to 9 points. That's typically good enough to win.
So, Zach, one of the stories, unfortunately, from this game is the health. I know you don't automatically get updates in the locker room, but Jordan Mailata, Dallas Goedert, Darius Slay, three pretty big pieces of this team, all leave with some injuries. Any sense of how serious some of these hamstrings are? Mailata going off in the cart didn't look like great optics. Any sense of what's happening there?
Well, I spoke to, well, I tried getting more information on the severity of Jordan's injury. I don't believe that Sirianni has the medical meeting until after the press conference. It's not before the press conference. Lane Johnson's hoping everything's okay. He saw it happen. I was talking to him about that. He didn't have an early sense of the severity. Darius Slay, I saw him walking in the corridor after the game. He was, he had a limp, but it wasn't like, he was on crutches or anything like that. Dallas Goedert was on the sideline during the game. I don't think that's a long-term injury. Whether he's back next Sunday, we'll see. But I think Mailata is the one to really be focused on. I did ask after the game about it. The medical meeting had not taken place at the time that I asked.
On Nick, Zach, just to circle back on it, the decorum stuff. We talked about what Jeffrey Lurie said at the owners' meetings. What did you make of it?
So, did you guys watch the press conference? Did you get Nick's? Okay, so I mean, it was a long one today. It was interesting that what?
No, it was long. He was rambling.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys got to this part or not, but that a few of the players told him during the bye week that he needs to get back to kind of who he was from a personality perspective.
You think he's telling the truth on this?
Jalen Hurts said he was one of them. Jalen Hurts says he doesn't know what other guys said, but Jalen says, like, you have to be you. And so that I did sense early in the season, Nick, like, trying to be different. And so that was an interesting admission that perhaps it was a little tight around there. I don't know, but that there was a noticeable difference with Nick. I don't think, now Nick's answers about, it's just the fans cheering, that kind of thing. He said, you don't like when your fans boo. They hear that. You don't think that you don't like it. Clearly he didn't like it. For Nick to react that way, something had to be said that really set him off. Now, where Bo and I were sitting in the press box before halftime, there was a fire Nick or Nick must go chant. It didn't catch on, but the boos very much did. Now, Lane Johnson said, he heard the boos. Doesn't
have the same ring to it. It's not as good of a chant.
Lane Johnson heard the boos. He basically said the boos were fair. They weren't playing well early, right?
Yeah, totally.
But Nick's, I thought my big takeaway, other than the fact that is a bad look for Nick to be screaming at your own fans after a win. My big takeaway was players telling them that, because if that is the case, and Jalen Hurts did say he was one of those guys, then it shows that Nick's kind of reserved nature, or in trying to be reserved during the first month of the season, did not go over the way it needed to. If players felt that Nick needed to get that swagger back. So I thought actually that
the perception that he wasn't demonstrative in those first 4 weeks either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, you remember in the Saints game or in the Falcons game, he's like Conor McGregoring down the sideline and going after C.J. Gardner-Johnson after he makes that fourth down stop. I think it's because they weren't playing well that he wasn't. Like, if they were playing well, he would be more demonstrative.
Yeah, true. But perhaps it's the trash talking on the sideline which is something he's done in the past.
That's what this team's missing, is more trash talk from the head coach.
I mean, I'm just relaying to you what was said. But I thought that was an interesting admission.
The problem with all of this, and as we've talked about, and Friend did a good job outlining like how difficult the plays that A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith have made, it's hard to love the chest pounding when this game is decided by the Eagles having A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith on the field. Like, if they don't have A.J. Brown, I don't think they have schemed up a win in this game. And so what is your read on like the importance of having those guys back?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear. And I said this after the Green Bay game that this team's built around its stars. So you look at that drive to put them ahead. I know it was a 4-play drive, but one was an incompletion. So 3 plays. One is a good chunk run from Saquon Barkley, or a good run by Saquon Barkley. The next is a big pass to A.J. Brown. The next is a big pass to DeVonta Smith. Jalen Hurts said that pass to DeVonta was, it was similar to the big play in the Saints game. So yeah, it's clear. And I said this on the shows this week that the biggest change the Eagles can make is getting their stars back. And when those guys are in the lineup, it's a lot different. And so you are right. I don't think they like outcoached Stefanski here. Or the Browns. I thought the Browns played a sloppy game. I think there was things the Browns could have done better, but I don't think this was like a coaching or schematic masterclass from the Eagles. I think the Eagles stars made big plays throughout the game, but especially, it was interesting talking to DeVonta about some of this. DeVonta said that like you got to be patient. You got to be patient during the game, and that you're getting man coverage against this team. You're not going to get man coverage every week. And so when you face man coverage, you got to take advantage of it. And that's exactly what happened on the big touchdown that he had, he said.
I was going to say, and that's, Zach, I asked you on Thursday about if you had gotten any sense behind the scenes, if there was anything else that they were really emphasizing offensively, because honestly, my like antenna went off a little bit when Nick Sirianni at his press conference on Wednesday really harped on like the turnovers. And that was the big takeaway from the bye week and how they had to eliminate the turnovers. And yes, they did in this game, but that didn't stop them from still being inconsistent offensively. And that's kind of why I asked you that question was if that was just their hope that, hey, you know what, like we're getting AJ and DeVonta back and everything's going to be better and we're just going to not turn the ball over. And now, everything's going to be hunky dory offensively. I don't know if that's going to be a sustainable formula. Like, it's just that was the issue that this team had a year ago, was just the volatility of that pass game from a drop back standpoint. And right now, I think that's what it's going to continue to be unless they change what that identity is on the field.
I agree with you for the most part. I thought today was the exception because there were times when, just with the way the Browns defense plays, that you saw one safety high, right? A single safety high, tight man coverage. And I remember the slant to AJ. I see the field from the bird's eye view, and I'm like, this has to go to AJ right here, right? Like this is the matchup that you crave. So there are going to be weeks when you're going to have to out scheme the opponent. I think today was a day when you could just rely on your best players to make plays. It didn't result in a rout, but DeVonta Smith, AJ Brown both found the end zone. That's not a coincidence from my perspective.
Zach, we talked about a couple of defensive guys. The defense for the most part was really good today. That jumped off the page at us. Who jumped off the page to you? Who comes to mind?
Well, Cooper DeJean specifically, because I thought they used him creatively. He was an effective blitzer. Now I don't think the blitz pickup was probably what the Browns wanted there. And on a few of those cases, they were down to their third string running back. That could have had an effect on it. But you can see why Fran was so high on Cooper DeJean coming out of the draft. Like he was the physicality that now, when I say physicality, hey, there was a sack. He should have brought the guy down instead of just pushed him.
Sure.
He gets there, right? And I thought that I thought Cooper played decently. I thought CJ made a nice stop on the on that final drive. That was a key play there. Jalen Carter. I spoke to Jalen Carter after the game, and I thought he was really a force on the inside. And then Brandon Graham, one of the underrated plays in this game, and I got to go back and watch the replay, but before the missed field goal that the Browns had, there was the play when I think they bring Jameis Winston in, and it looks like they might go quarterback sneak, but instead it's an end around to Cedric Tillman, and Brandon Graham sniffs it out, pushes them back 5 yards. Then the field goal just misses, right? if he makes that field goal there, the tenor of the game is different, and Cleveland can operate differently late in the game as well, right? So, I thought Brandon Graham in the 200th game stood out there.
BG
but overall,
so good at specifically not getting sucked in on that stuff. It's like
he was calling it out before it even happened.
Why do you think that is, Vinny?
200
games,
yeah.
like
200 games.
You've seen it
Played a
all.
lot of football.
Crazy. Like run it at anybody else. Go ahead.
Zach,
but really,
I
thought
we got
this
another chapter in the new book, the 200th game.
Yeah.
You know what? Brandon Graham book would be interesting. That's for sure. I would like that. He would have some stories.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought Deshaun Watson was a big help for the Eagles too. Like I thought Deshaun Watson did not play well at all. Held on to the ball too long. There were two plays from the press box where I'm seeing I think of these offhand. Like I'm like Jerry Jeudy's wide open here, and Deshaun was just late seeing it. So I get it's easy for me to say that from the press box, but the numbers bear that out this season. I thought that and the fact that, look, the Browns had a beat up offensive line, and the Eagles were able to take advantage of that at times.
We didn't get, you mentioned C.J. Gardner-Johnson. We haven't yet talked about the funniest play of the game when C.J. Gardner-Johnson breaks up the interception for Quinyon Mitchell.
Well, he was
tough to say don't go after the ball, but it was very funny.
Quinyon was not happy on that one.
He was not happy at all. You wanted to talk about Myles Garrett, Zach.
Yeah, so Lane Johnson brought up Myles Garrett like unsolicited. Just when I asked him some of the takeaways from the game, and he said Jordan played really well, and then they said Fred came in and did his job too, because he said Myles Garrett's the best pass rusher in the league. Lane said that, and said that he was so tough to stop. And then Nick Sirianni said that he hadn't seen Myles Garrett he hadn't played against Myles Garrett in person, maybe with the exception of 2020. You had to think about it. But he said they spent their whole week thinking about Myles Garrett, and he was just awesome. And I thought that there were times in that game when you could see the attention the Eagles were giving to Myles Garrett, because there's one play that jumps up. He lined up on the right, came all the way. Oh, I'm sorry. He lined up on the offensive left, his right, okay, and came all the way around, and Lane Johnson ended up blocking him. It was a third down pass that went incomplete. But I remember saying, like, you have Lane Johnson for that reason there. Myles Garrett was just an absolute force. So that was one thing. Lane, I spoke to Lane a good amount, and he brought up Myles Garrett unsolicited, and the fact that he brought that up, I thought was noteworthy.
Well, speaking of that, what is your level of concern with the special teams at the moment?
Yeah, very. I mean, this is 3 big game-changing plays. This one, the Saints game with the block punt. And then and then last week, Cooper DeJean's fumble. And I don't think special teams is I think there's year-to-year variance, because a lot of those players obviously change, and there seems to be issues here. And I'm looking forward to speaking to Michael Clay this week about this. But look, the Eagles aren't good enough to give up cheap touchdowns like that, or to give up possessions like they did 2 weeks ago in Tampa. If you're this juggernaut, you say, all right, this isn't good, but maybe you can get away with it. Like, they're not good enough to lose on the margins, and they're losing on the margins on special teams. That's problematic. It's already come back to bite them this year, and it could come back to bite them in the future.
All right, Zach, what are you going to be writing about on allphly.com, and any other nuggets that you feel like are worth sharing?
Yeah, a few more nuggets.
They are golden, funny, or relevant.
Yeah, so the kill shot play, I thought it was interesting. I asked DeVonta before, I spoke to Nick or Jalen. I asked DeVonta about it. I said that's a bold play, a bold decision. Like what are you thinking when that call's made? And DeVonta says if you don't have nuts in this game, maybe you shouldn't be in this game. And that was his answer.
Let those cards hang.
I thought that was a succinct way to put it. Nick said that they've talked about closing games. This is a big emphasis for them. They've lost games this year in 4-minute situations where they've given the ball back. And he said they were not going to give the ball back. They had the call and the check there that they wanted to. Like Jalen says, that's a read on the play. And you don't know going into it if that's what you're going to do, but then when the coverage presents itself, like that's what you do. And it was a huge play because look, if Cleveland gets the ball back there, I know they haven't played well this year or this game this year, but I mean, you don't know if Deshaun Watson drives down and scores, and it's a 4-point game at that point, right? So the ability or the chance to close the game with the ball in your hands is huge. And I thought maybe the Dotson catch would end it, but that did not happen. Jamie asked me before the game about Nick Sirianni's haircut. So kind of a little background on that. I think that's Nick's summer haircut. Okay. And he got a picture in this week from the summer, from like, something that he took over the summer, like a processing photo, and he liked the way he looked. So he said he'll go back to that. So that's the story behind the haircut. It's not like a motivational thing or anything like that. It was, it's a summer cut, and he liked the way he looked. He decided to roll with it.
I mean, if we've questioned his judgment before, it might be even worse.
And then, he explained why he had
that's an I lost a bet haircut if I've ever seen one.
Ouch. I mean, I thought we're like a pro haircut show here, right? Like,
well, yeah, I asked you about it before in the press box, and you said, "Well, I don't really want to talk about haircuts." I said, "That's the first time I've ever heard that out of you." I was talking about haircuts more than you.
I compliment haircuts. I'm not ripping on haircuts. I mean, it's a subjective thing. It's an art. It's not a science. What's that?
I feel like as someone whose haircut has been denigrated relentlessly over the past couple months, that I at least have earned being able to do it to somebody else.
We don't need to relitigate that, but I definitely, what I said is that I hadn't had to worry about fades in the past because you don't have a fade. Now that we have Fran,
that's not what
I need
you
to keep
said.
my fade game.
That's what you tried to correct.
I said
that's how you tried to defend
the great thing about this is everything's on tape. We can go back and we can play the tape. So that Nick was explaining that he had his kids up there.
Vinny is like, what have I gotten myself into?
Nick explained that he had his kids up there because it was the way he was growing up, like he wants his kids to have these great memories. AJ Brown came to his son's baseball game. Jalen Hurts gave his son a jersey. Like he wants his kids to have this experience. So he was explaining that. And then you said what I'm writing about. I'm going to do this style that I've done the past 2 games, which is like a way of this format, which is a way of addressing like 4 or 5 different things. So there'll be about 2,000 words with probably like 300 to 500 on a number of different topics, and I'll find a way to make one topic flow into the next topic, so you can check that out. Right. And about what's that?
Nothing. Go ahead.
No. So all right. So the topics that I'll cover, I will cover Nick Sirianni. I will cover Nick Sirianni's decorum. I'll
put a couple words together, and those words will form a sentence, and from then I will then create another sentence.
I will cover the defense, his performance. I will cover that kill shot play. I will cover a lot of the topics that we talked about here with just some more insight from the locker room on it as I go through all my notes.
All right. Well, we look forward to reading it. Make sure that you are a diehard so that you can read it as well on allphly.com. And Zach, we will see you in studio tomorrow at 2:00 for the PHLY Eagles Podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.